Okay, we're going to start by talking about multiplying some radical expressions. And when you're multiplying a radical expression, a couple things to keep in mind is your own is that your coefficients are going to multiply your other coefficients and your radicals are going to multiply your other radicals. So you're going to multiply your coefficients. So here I would have 3 times 2 is 6. You will multiply your radicals, or you multiply your radicands. So square root of 5 times square root of 7 is going to be the square root of 35. And if possible, you would simplify your radical then. And I cannot simplify the square root of 35. So in this current example, we're done. Now, as you go on, things can get considerably more interesting. So if I've got something like, say I've got like 3 square roots of 6, and let's say I were to multiply this by, oh, I don't know, the square root of 8 plus the square root of 3. You're still going to distribute. So here, this would be 3. And if I don't have a coefficient in front of this, I'm just going to consider my coefficient to be 1. So this is going to be 3, and then I'll have this square root of 48, square root of 6 times square root of 8. And this is going to be plus 3 square roots of 18. So you're going to distribute like you normally would. And then from here, we can simplify these radicals. So when I do this, I always like to say, look for the, you're going to look for the highest perfect square factor. So with 48, I know that 16 is a factor, and that'll be 16 times 3. With 18, I see that I've got 9 times 2. So this is going to be 3 times 4 square roots of 3. So I'm going to have 12 square roots of 3 here. Square root of 9 is 3. So 3 times 3, that's going to be plus 9 square roots of 2. And here we would be done. This is the sort of basic levels of multiplying some radical expressions. Things can definitely get more interesting the more terms you add on to something like this. So a couple little tricks or tips. If we've got like multiple radicands, one of the things that I will do is I will factor that radicand before we multiply. And here is why. When we do this, say I've got something like, oh, well, let's say we've got, I seem to like threes a lot today. So I've got like 3, and I'll do the square root of, say, 10x cubed. And then I'm going to multiply this by 5 square roots of 6xy. And then I'll multiply this by 2 square roots of 15xy squared. Oh my gosh, look at all of this. This is a little bit of a mess. But if we were to rearrange this, I could say I'll have 3 times 5 times 2. I'm going to just rearrange this. And then under the radical, I've got my 10x cubed times 6xy times 15xy squared. This is still messy. And just if I were to multiply all this out, it's still going to be messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and leave that. I'll multiply that out because 5 times 2 is 10 times 3 is 30. But now let's start to break this up. 10 is 2 times 5. Actually, I'm going to do this as more of a little thought bubble over here. I'll say, okay, 10 is 2 times 5. 6 is 2 times 3, and 15 is 3 times 5. So now when I look at this, when I multiply all this together, I've got 2 times 2 times 5 times 5 times 3 times 3. So I've got 2 squared times 3 squared times 5 squared. Then I've got my x cubed times x, so that's times x to the 5th, and then I've got my y to the 3rd power. And now looking at this, this is a lot easier to parse. I can then say, oh yeah, this is going to be, here is my perfect squares. I've got this 2 squared times 3 squared times my 5 squared. And then I've got and then I could say I'll have an x to the 4th and a y squared here. And what do I have left over here? It looks like I've just got a factor of x and y. So now I've got 30 times 2 times 3 times 5, and then times an x squared y. And so this is going to be times another 30. 30 times 30 is going to be 900 x squared y, and then I've got my xy. It becomes a little bit easier when I factor those radicands, so I can see what I can break apart. Because otherwise, I just would have had 900 under here, and then have to figure out what squared would make that up. All right, I think I'm going to stop this video right here, and I will continue on talking about multiplying radicands in the next video.